this week for business planning stuff, we talked about tracking.
Tracking it.
We talked about tracking. And a lot of times whenever we talk to our agents about tracking, it sounds a lot like, oh, you need to be tracking your calls, your notes, your pop buys, referrals, all that, like these activities.
Right.
And that's very true. You have to know those numbers. You need to know how many calls you made that led to how many referrals and how many of those closed.
Yeah.
How many contacts did you make? That's calls, texts, emails, note cards, all of that. Like you need to know those numbers so then you know how to work.
Right.
Right? I know that it takes X amount of calls to get one deal closed. This many calls equals this many referrals equals this many closings, right?
Right.
We're helping our agents work through that. We've also been able to help other business owners work through that number.
Yeah.
Because it's relevant across the board.
Oh, yeah.
But tracking is not just, did you record your call in your CRM? Tracking is having a process put in place that you reference back to and use all the time. Like our tracking sheet, we have our whole business on a Google spreadsheet and it's telling, so we can see everything at one time.
Right.
And we track it there. We know when's in title, we know what listings are live, we know who's writing contracts right now, we know what's coming up,
Right.
we know what's happening in property management, and then we have all of our leads.
Right.
And that's in one sheet because it's hard when you can't see everything in one spot. There are systems that can do it, and there are some people who are really, really good at that.
Yeah.
I get kind of overwhelmed once I start using things like too big here. But when my system is, I need to be able to see it and look at it and track it. So when we open that sheet, I can tell you most everything about our business. And we were talking yesterday in our training about it. You saw a bunch of light bulbs kind of going off. Like, I never thought about tracking outside of calls, notes, and pop buys. And I was like, no, tracking is so much bigger than that. Are you tracking your budget and your expenses and all of that kind of stuff? Are you tracking your processes and your procedures? Are you tracking that every time I get a new listing, here's my entire checklist and they're all done the exact same way?
Right.
Can you see it in one spot where you know where you're at with everything? Tracking isn't just, yeah, I put all my leads in and I did that. Tracking is more in detail to your entire business. And so if you're only focusing on tracking the activities, which is very needed, and that's what I think a lot of real estate agents hear when we start talking about tracking. Like, I feel like people don't want to come to that training because they understand that they need to be recording their calls.
Right.
But tracking is more than that. It's how are you tracking your business? Do you have your business plan in a trackable form?
The thing with that, though, is that if you are tracking those, like obviously calls, notes, all the things you're doing in those touches with your people, but realistically, when you start looking at the contracts that come from that, the referrals that come from that, the activities that are generated from these things, what you're really seeing is that business plan come to life in the execution of those little tasks. So ideally, when you go back to that plan at the end of quarter one and you go, okay, here we are 12 weeks later. If you're doing the 12-week year, like I love that we're doing that. It's helpful so that you don't wake up 14, 16, 18 weeks down the line and go, well, it's the end of end of spring, here comes summer. And oh, by the way, I have no idea how it's going. I know we're making money and that's great, but am I making more money than I was trying to make? Am I closing more deals?
Do I have any of that?
And if I am, then I don't know which lever to pull to make it actually produce what I need it to. And so definitely tracking is huge. And it's also kind of the trust process, think, plan, and prepare. By doing that business plan and all the way down to actually taking the action, you're seeing it step by step come to fruition in real time right in front of you.
And it's also, we talked about other things that they should be tracking too, like social media. Do you have a plan and do you have somewhere where you make sure you got it everywhere it needs to go? Some systems, again, can do that. You can get things that will blast out everywhere for you, but maybe you are really good at your business side and not that great at your personal side. Do you have some way to make sure that you're tracking what you're doing and what you put out? Right. We do. Thank you, Christian.
Yeah, appreciate it, brother.
And so we talked a lot about what else needs to be tracked. Your marketing plan, your things like that, using all that. And then we dove into Google Sheets because I'm obsessed with them and we use them for everything.
Well, and they keep getting better too.
And they do. They really have. They've improved some things and there's some new stuff happening. So I really like it. But we talked a lot about, it's fun. And I'm such a nerd, but it's really fun. And we talked about implementing that and why I started there and how it grew as a team. And so it was really good. We were just talking about again, tracking is not just how many calls did you do or how much volume have you actually produced.
Right.
It is, are your systems trackable? Is your process trackable?
Mm-hmm.
Are you recording how you're doing it so that you can then duplicate it?
Right.
And so, yeah, it was a really good one.
Well, and when you said that, it made me think of, like, why is social media so hard? And why is it so difficult to track and capture these things? And I'm coming back to that quote that I couldn't remember earlier, and I'm going to try it again and see if I can put it together. But essentially, it was being consistent in doing the things that you need to do is impossible if you don't have the mindset and belief that you are the person who can do those things consistently.
That makes more sense.
Right. And so I know it's sort of a circular logic, but walk with me, because if you believe that being a real estate agent is being a business owner, and if you believe those two things, and then you believe that being a business owner means that I have to be consistent in posting these things, and if I do these things, they're actually going to come around and make me a successful business owner, that you can actually see that thing come full circle and change that mindset to believe that you are the person that you want to be.
It's the same concept of, like, if you can't manage $100, you can't manage $100,000.
Yeah, same.
So it's kind of that same thing, like, but you have to daily affirmations, your I am statement. I am a profitable business owner.
Right.
And so as you're creating your habits and your consistency with the belief that you can do it.
Right. That's huge.